Hello and welcome to Scran, the podcast passionate about the Scottish food and drink scene, and welcome back to our second part of our special bonus episodes where I visit Orkney to discover more about the island's food and drink industry. On this episode, I went along to Barony Mill where I met Alister Harcus, and I can honestly say it's one of the most enjoyable and educational recordings I have ever done. To see such an historic building still functioning, as well as the day it was built, was inspirational. Alister showed me all around the mill, explaining the different processes and history.
That's how deep the water would be. But the wheel won't go any faster. Because you're grinding in the inside. Now that wheel's 150 years old.
I sat down with Graham Bruce, Visits and Retail Operations Manager at Highland Park, to hear all about the changes to the distillery in recent times. We also discussed the downturn in the industry and a change in their marketing strategy, which had piqued my interest. You'll also hear parts of the tour of the distillery I went on with our tour guide, Darren.
Magnus would hold funerals and hide some of his illegal moonshine, his bootleg liquor, in the coffins to smuggle them around Cockwell and Orkney. Just to really show you what it was like back in those days. All illegal.
You just ask the questions and I'll tell you the lie.
Yeah, exactly.
Welcome to the Barony Mill, the last and only working mill in Orkney, and the only one in the world that does a food called beer. It's an ancient barley, or the barley family, that we actually thought the Vikings took to Orkney, but we found it in Scarborough 6-7 years ago and did a DNA test on it, and it's over 5,000 years old. So that was before the Vikings, so that put the Vikings out the window. So we actually don't know how it did get to Orkney. But it's a very healthy flour. High in protein, low in gluten, high in fibre, and high in a lot of the Bs. Where we're standing now is in front of the mill. This mill goes back to 1873, and it's as good as the day it was built almost. It's nice, only square. And we can go inside and go walk around, and we'll explain as we go. Will that make sense?
Yeah, sounds good, thank you.
Right. The water we use here comes from the reservoir back up along the road. Now the council bought the mill back in 1992 so they could get the water rights, because they use the water for human, we use it for milling. So if it comes like in the summer time and it's a very dry year, they don't want us doing any milling. We don't do milling in the summer. We do it from about October to April. And then we go into tours. That gives the mill a wee rest, and you'll be pushed for the quantity of water we go through. When the mill's running flat out, it's taking 110,000 gallons of water an hour. So that's why the council prefers not to do it in the summer.
So the council own the mill then?
Yes, we rent it for the council. They have offered to sell it to us, and we're thinking about it. We'll get it at a very good price.
No, don't say that.
This is the fireplace where we do the drying. I get the grain coming into me at 13% moisture, 13 parts water. I put it on our own kiln and I dry it from 13 right down to 7. So if you were going to buy flour today at 7%, you can take it, put it in your freezer. It'll keep forever and it'll not freeze. It'll stay powder. You go back a month after, 6 months, it'll still be powder. Because at 7% there's no water left. And what I use on the fire is the outside of the grain called the husk. When it goes through the first set of stones, it cracks the grain and takes the husk off it. So I just put a paper sack in the bottom of the fire and lay the husk on the top and set light to it, and away it goes.
So it's sustainable?
Yeah. I get enough of 1 ton to dry the next ton, so it costs me nothing. It's always been used this way. I can take you in here and I'll show you the underside of the kiln. Watch a wee step. So If you look above your heads, you can see the kiln going up in a big V shape. That's wood, and that's been there for the day the mill was built, 1873. Now, a lot of folk think, head on, this is wood, it'll go on fire, but it's lined on the inside with a grain of cement with lime in it, and that covers the wood and stops it from going on fire.
And is it a one-man operation?
It's really a one-man job. When we're selling more stuff, you need somebody extra coming in and bagging to you. But back in them days, it would just been a one-man job. It wouldn't been enough wages coming in for two men. So if you go back out and turn to the right, there's a list of all the millers that has been in from when the mill was built in 1873. It's not a big list for 150 years. Like it was in the Phillips family for 60 years. And the one lady miller, she did it for 10 years. Fergus Morrison sold it to the council in 92. They wanted the water rights and that so that they could control it because of the human side, which is only but right. Then the Bushey Heritage Trust, local folk got together and asked if they could take it on and run it. And they said yes. Really the council was looking away at getting rid of the mill side. So, and it's never looked back. It's always come to head. The same year, 97, Ray Phillips retired as a lighthouse keeper. But Ray was a son of William and a grandson of Joan. So he knew everything about the mill. Not just this mill, but every mill in Scotland.
And now it's you?
Now it's me. We do have an apprentice that comes from Tanzania, but I only got 9 months with Ray before he passed away, which was sad. He kent all the mills in the whole of Scotland.
And do you know how many mills like this are left, or how many kind of traditional mills are there left in Scotland?
I can't answer for the whole of Scotland, but this is the only one in Orkney. At one time there were 48 working mills in Orkney.
And were they all making bear meal?
Bear meal and oat meal. But a lot of the mills did for animal fodder. Food, the farmers would come and pick it up because they had no way of, well, we call it bruising, some folk call it rolling. They had no way of doing that, so they just put it to the watermill and they did it.
So over the years, has there been like surge in demand and then drops? And how is it these days?
Up until probably the 90s, it would have been a steady kind of thing. It would just been the housewife. They weren't selling that much to the public. We're selling far more to the public. We're sending it to Glasgow, Edinburgh, Inverness, London, and we're posting all over Britain every week. And now we have the wee shop and we're open through the summer. We're going through far more. But we're also making more stuff. Like I'll show you our biscuits, millionaire shortbread. It's something you have to try. It's unreal, really good. So we are doing more.
And what about during COVID? Because I know that people went a bit mental for making bread and flour sold out. And how did you guys find that?
It went mental. Some weeks we were posting up to 50 to 100 parcels. And it kept going on like that for a while. But that parcels have been small ones like 1.5 kilo size. The ones that we're posting now is boxes up to 20 kilos. So they're taking far more.
You mentioned it's full of fibre and B vitamins, and there's obviously huge demand and trends now in those type of things for diet, so vitamins and fibre and protein. Are you finding that is sort of driving things as well? Like people are getting more onto these heritage things because of how healthy they are?
Oh yeah, focus far more looks at what they're eating. It's a very healthy flour we do have, being very high in protein and low in gluten. So definitely focus looking at that. And we're that low in the gluten side that I have hence celiacs actually come by me and say they can take our flour. So it's not much, but we have to advise them. There's a trace there.
And what about whiskey? So I know some people are going back to using beer barley. How are you, Guy?
At the whiskey distillery in Kirkwall, Scapa Distillery. Now they've been going to come out for this last year or two with a malt whiskey, but they're not doing it. I think they're waiting till it's 10-year-old. It'd be 6 or 7-year-old just now. And when it's 10-year-old, they come out with it.
I know that it's sort of heritage grain and it does obviously grow quite well, because I know that a lot of people stopped using it because it's low yield and it maybe didn't grow well, or...
Yeah, you had that right on the button. The reason why the farmers stopped using it is we can only get up to 1.5 tons per acre. Other barley's oats, you're looking at least 3 tons to the acre. So you're getting slightly less than half. If it wasn't for that, the farmers would grow it because it's a lot more healthier even for the animals, never mind the humans.
Alister showed me around the mill and the fascinating stones, cogs, levers and pulleys that make up this historic production system. It was hard to believe it was all powered by water. Our next stop was above the fireplace we had seen earlier in the kiln.
This is where the kiln, where we dry the grain. We put 1,000 kilos on the floor. It'd be about that deep, 75 mil. And I light the fire and I come up every hour and I turn it over so that it doesn't burn on the one side. Then after 4 or 5 hours, if you look at the wee window and it's nice and dry, it'll be down to about 7%. If there's condensation on it, it means that there's still water coming out of the grain, so stoke the fire a bit more. So then you leave it overnight to cool down, and if you look at the door, you see there a hole at each side of it. That's where I put the grain the next day using the water wheel. If you look at the left one, there's a cable. That cable hooks onto this big shovel, and the water wheel would be turning, so I would just pull the rope above my head, it would engage and pull the grain into the hole. You let the water wheel do it, all I do is steady the back of the shovel.
This is the type of thing at a whisky distillery you sort of try to imagine.
Well, we replaced this floor over the last few years. We couldn't afford to do it in one. For one of them sections was over £1,000. Oh, wow. So that's why it took us we did it in 3 or 4 stages. You meet a lot of folk in the summer. The winter, it's just a one-man job. As I say, I don't think it's a young man's job because there's no computers and there's just your sail working.
That must be quite nice in a way, though. Is this what you always wanted to do?
Oh,
What did you do before?
I've been mainly in farming most of my life, but who I came here, I'm not fairly sure.
But here you are.
I was at the old folks' home seeing my wife's mum and dad, and a lady came up to me and asked me, would I like to be a miller? And I goes, what? Before I knew it, I was here for an interview and had the job.
That's amazing. Does it feel like your baby?
I suppose that's one way of putting it. I keep on calling it a her or a she. I don't know why, but you can, when you mention anything, oh, she did this or she did that, I mean in the mill.
Something like this should be preserved, so it's, keeping it going must be sort of...
I think there should be far more of this, especially like, I'll take you out and show you the wheel turning. Why don't they do, it's simple and cost effective, but they'll not do it. It seems like if it doesn't cost £1 billion to do something, nobody will do it. But I'll take you down and we'll start the wheel and go outside and see the wheel turning. Watch. So, there's where the water's coming down to the mill. We call it the lead. The wheel's out at that end of the mill. So, this is the off-on switch. So if you put your hand there and push down, listen to the water.
Oh, it stopped.
Up.
Yeah.
Right. Just take a minute to fill in the buckets on the wheel and it'll take it around. We don't have a lot of water on today. There you
Here we go.
So we'll go downstairs and you will see the wheel turning outside.
Okay.
Watch your arms. Mind your head as you come through. So that was your off-on switch. All the water was running down there and under the hole. But it doesn't seal it because it dries out some days and then gets wet. So the water goes down over the top. And you can see, we call it buckets. The water goes in that and the weight of the water then takes the wheel around. This is known as the overshot wheel because the water comes over the top. When I'm milling flat out, you see that 2 bits of wood at the top?
Yeah.
That's how deep the water would be. But the wheel won't go any faster because you're grinding in the inside. Now that wheel's 150 years old and nothing's been done to it. The bucket, the water bucket, has been replaced, but the metal, no.
That's amazing.
I think that mill, what we're working with, a Barony mill, you can with the colour of the stones and so you can come back in now and stop the mill. Who starts the mill stops the mill. Ah yes, here we go.
Oh yeah, so it's very much like a wholemeal flour.
Yeah, and very fine. Or soft, I'm not sure what's the right words. That's how I make it. Some otherbody might make it slightly coarser or finer, but it was just Ray learned me how to put it between your fingers and find how coarse it was.
I asked Alister what people make using the bare barley flour.
Flatbreads and biscuits would be low in gluten. It doesn't want to rise, so you can't make a big bread loaf with it. Biscuits, it makes the best shortbread you'll ever taste. And we're coming out with different recipes. As I say, the millionaire shortbread, we tried it with it, and oh my. It just, I always thought millionaire shortbread got a wee bit sickening. The toffee would be a bit. What this does, I don't know. It seems to stiffen it up a wee bit. And try it. It is really, really.
Do you sell that? No.
Oh yes.
Yes, you do.
I think we need to go to the shop.
Yeah, I think we need to go to the shop. Well, thank you very much. It's been absolutely fascinating and lovely to meet you. And thanks for letting me switch on the mill.
Oh, you're welcome.
We did go into the shop, and let's just say, following some sampling with Alister, I ended up bringing back quite the haul to the mainland. He was right about the millionaire shortbread. Try it as soon as you get the chance. It was time to head to one of the island's most successful brands, Highland Park. You'll hear from Darren, our tour guide, and Graham Bruce.
Come in, take a seat, and a warm welcome to Highland Park Distillery. Make yourselves at home, everybody. You can sit anywhere you want. And recently with Highland Park, we were shut down 2 years ago for just under 12 months because we did a few changes here to the distillery. Things are changing in the world, things are changing in the whisky industry. By 2045, everybody has to be carbon neutral. And by 2030, we have to reduce our emissions by at least 50%. So when we were in our shutdown 2 years ago, we made a few changes here at the distillery. We've still managed to keep the traditional ways with Highland Park, but we're also had to move with the times, and I'm going to be telling you about this when we head out on tour today. But to begin with, we're going to start with a whisky.
Graham, we're here in Highland Park, and this is my first visit here, which is quite exciting. Thank you for having us. Do you want to just give a quick overview for people that don't know about, you were shut for a wee while, you're reopening, what happened, what can people expect?
Yeah, we were closed most of 2024 and we were replacing our washbacks. So we were taking out wooden washbacks and we now have stainless steel washbacks. And we were also doing a bit of work in our still house with heat recovery. The heat recovery side of it meant that we're using the heat from the stills to then heat or dry the malt in the kilns. So that has allowed us to completely remove coke or the coal from the process. And then in the washbacks, it allows us to, I guess, control fermentation a lot better. So yeah, huge project for us, and it involved taking the roof off the mash house to get everything out and then putting everything back in. So that's why it was closed for a long time. But we're really happy to be back open.
And how are visitors finding? I mean, there'll be people who return visitors. Are they quite sort of taken aback by the new look washbacks?
Yeah, I think it's a funny one because we get a lot of first-time visitors here because a lot of our business is tourism and people coming to Orkney for the first time like yourself. So they don't really notice any difference. But yeah, you're absolutely right. People who are repeat visitors, it's a huge difference. You know, the before and after in the room is just massive. So yeah, it's great for them to come and see what we're doing and where the brand's going and a bit of investment in the distillery.
So everything, seems quite old. You come into the courtyard, it's really old, and then you're still doing the floor maltings and things, and then you get in there and it's like modern.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great contrast, and I think that sort of highlights where we are in the industry. There's lots of new things going on, but we are still very much traditional and doing things the same way as we always have done.
And do you want to tell us a bit about your sort of seasonality of here? Are you being quite busy? Like, what is happening?
Yeah, I think the nature of Orkney and the distillery especially is lots of tourism. So there's lots of cruise ships arrive in Orkney and lots of visitors come off them and visit the distillery. Some know about Highland Park, some don't know anything about Highland Park. So it's a great opportunity for us to reach brand new customers and introduce the brand. And we also do tastings and flights in the distillery and our shop in Albert Street, so it's not even people who have to go on a tour to find out about the brand. So yeah, we've had a really good start to the financial year in April and May.
With things in the whisky world generally, how are you finding sort of things in general as a brand?
I think like most whisky brands at the moment, it's tough just now globally, but I think there are certainly areas where we can see a bit of growth and see, hopefully it's coming to an end shortly and we'll start to see growth across the globe again. But I think it's been tough on everybody just with cost of living and tariffs and everything that's going on in the world. But hopefully there are some sort of light, I think, at the end of the tunnel.
Earlier this year you released Heather, which is your cask strength, very peated whisky. Do you have any other releases you can tell us about for this year or going into next year?
I don't think I can tell you about them, but there are a couple coming. There is one coming shortly that is similar to what we've done before, and it's kind of a theme on that. So yeah, there'll be something out about September time, but I don't think I'm allowed to discuss it any more than that at the moment.
We need to give you some of this whiskey in front of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's absolutely beautiful. The Heather's an outstanding whisky, but having one in the warehouse, there's something special about it. So this is a typical Dunnage warehouse, old-fashioned and traditional, 23 of them on site. And I'm just going to talk to you about the history of Highland Park, because we were founded in 1798 by a man called Magnus Jonsson. He originally came from Scandinavia, and the best way to describe Magnus, he was a bit of a character. Because by day he was a man of the church and a butcher, but by night he was into the legal operation of making moonshine. And this is how it all started up. The visitor centre that we've just came from is the oldest building on site, and that's where Magnus started the whole operation, more like a bootleg liquor. I'm going to tell you a story. You can believe this if you want, but it's more a folk story here in Orkney. Magnus would hold funerals and hide some of his illegal moonshine, this bootleg liquor, in the coffins to smuggle them around Kirkwall and Orkney, just to really show you what it was like back in those days. All illegal. However, Magnus got caught in 1798 by the local taxman, David Robertson. And then it was David himself that took over this whole area, started working towards making it legal, and then we got our official licence in 1826. We've been on the go a very long time, over 225 years old. We're in the top 10 for being one of the oldest in Scotland that is still producing whisky. And you can see this by the whole grounds and the foundations of the distillery. And we have a capacity to store up to 48,000 casks here on site at one time. Please come in, take a deep breath in. You're going to get the whole idea of what's happening here. So I'm now going to speak to you about Orkney and this, peat. Have you all seen peat before? Some of the Europeans call it turf. You'll see one main thing here in Orkney is the lack of trees, and that's due to the weather and the climate. And this is what makes our whisky and peat very unique. We source it locally from a place called Hollister, which is around about 5 to 6 miles in the West Mainland. Out on Hollister, there is no trees. Our peat is mainly made up of wild purple heather that's all been decomposed down over the years. It makes it different from Islay and mainland Scotland because the peat that they use has wood remaining from trees. It makes it more smoky, whereas ours is very light and floral because of the heather peat. As you can see there, it's very light. And it's here where we'll burn our heather peat. Also, we own the peat land, so nobody else has access to the peat except ourselves. And this is what makes the whisky different, because you'll not find any other whisky in Scotland or the world that will use our heather peat. And it's here in the old-fashioned kiln where it will burn for an average 16 hours. Burn away, it gives off the heavy black smoke, and it sticks to the malt. Now this is when everything starts to change for Highland Park. Once we've burnt the peat, we need to dry it out because it doesn't give off a lot of heat. It's more heavy black smoke. I mentioned to you recently we had a shutdown 2 years ago, and this is where it starts to change, because before we used to use a smokeless coal called coke to dry out the malt. However, the one problem with coke is it gave off a lot of harmful gases, not very good for the environment, because I mentioned to you earlier, by 2045 we have to be carbon neutral. By 2030 we have to reduce our emissions by 50%. We no longer burn coke on this site. We have now installed a heat exchange system here on site, because we're capturing the hot water from the stills, regenerating it in as hot air to dry out the malt.
So Scran's big in Singapore. Where are your main markets, and what do you do to sort of market to other places that you're trying to get into?
We relaunched the brand about 18 months ago now, when we moved away from the sort of dark black and silver boxes that we had before, and we've brought it very much into the light, and the focus is not just on the Vikings in Orkney, but Orkney itself. So we've got much lighter, brighter products, and we talk a lot about our heather, which makes a big difference, is the main difference in our whisky, and we're the only brand that uses Orkney heather to peat the malt. So that's a big change for us, but it's fantastic, especially for us here at the distillery, that Orkney is the focus. Some of our biggest markets, obviously the US is big. We are big in Singapore and Japan as well, and other parts of Asia, and also in Europe, Germany and the Nordic countries, where we're big in, and growing in other countries as well. But that's probably our main markets where we would focus. But yeah, the market and all, I guess, took a turn about 18 months ago when we rebranded.
I was actually just looking at your Swallow's Return bottle. It's lovely, the design, and everything's, like you say, a bit lighter, brighter. It's like the more feminine. And whereas before it was quite dark and, Viking, like you say, was that a conscious decision in order to appeal to a different kind of drinker, or did you just feel like the time had come for a big change?
I think a bit of both. I think, the time had probably come for a change. We'd been dark and Viking for a while. It was looking for a new direction. I think as a brand, you would always like to appeal to new customers, new drinkers, people that maybe haven't tasted the brand before. So I think a bit of both, is in there.
And in order to get new customers and new drinkers, are you still sending people out to the sort of key markets as well as newer markets?
Yes, we've got our global brand ambassador, Martin Martvaardsen, and he basically travels the world talking about Highland Park, but we also have brand ambassadors in markets, in most markets and countries as well, and certainly where we're focusing on. But Martin was travelling over 200 days last year, so he's certainly spreading the word.
Does he look like a Viking? Because I think I've met him.
Yes, he absolutely does. And he's got our H for Highland Park on his chest tattooed as well. Wow. Yeah.
God, that's dedication.
Yeah, absolutely.
By law in Scotland, you have to use oak casks, and your new mixed spirit has to stay in it for a minimum of 3 years and 1 day. We're owned by a company called the Edrington Group. They own the Macallan and Glenrothes distilleries, and they will invest more than anybody else in Scotland in making our own sherry seasoned casks. Why? All about the quality. 60% of the flavour comes from the wood. 100% of the colour comes from the wood as well. Massive big influence with the whisky. We use primarily 2 different types of wood. European oak that comes from northern Spain, and American oak that we source from Ohio. We'll source the wood from trees that are over 70 years old. We'll cut the tree down, replace that tree with sapling, and then the wood's cut and then shipped to the cooperages in Spain, which left sit out in the Spanish sun for an average 2 to 4 years to air and dry out and get a Spanish suntan, as I call it. After that, we then start to form the casks. We're not burning it, it's just a very light toasting because we're trying to open up the pores of the wood to get the natural goodness. Because after that, we then fill it with a Rosso sherry, and it's then left to sit in the bodegas in Spain for an average around 18 months to 24 months to season. We're seasoning the casks. The sherry's drained out and it's recycled in the sherry industry with sherried vinegar, for example, and sherried wine. Or we can reuse the sherry to season the casks again. After that then, we get an empty cask here on site and we fill it with new make spirit. So the European, I think it's darker, richer, more bold. Dry fruits, raisins, chocolate, caramel. This reminds me of Christmas. Whereas the American is very sharp, very fresh. Vanilla, cinnamon, honey, summer fruits. And we'll use the 2 different casks, marry the liquid together, then this is how we make our whisky. We will use from time to time different casks. Because to be honest with you, if you're using the same casks, it gets boring. And you need a bit of variety to try something new and something different. We're no different. We have used ex-bourbon casks in the past, for example, for limited editions. We've also used Rocca wine casks for a limited edition. It was one of my personal favourite called Twisted Tattoo. And it was in bourbon cask and Rocca wine. And it was just lovely. And we've also got a current whisky on sale. It was in collaboration with Bjorn Franson, who's a 3-star Michelin star chef. We used virgin Swedish oak casks in bourbon for the first time. We've never used virgin Swedish oak, so we will do something a bit different. You never know what quite could be coming out. We might have some new releases next year that's more experimental because you need to do something different. There's such a variety in the whisky industry, but we just stick with our tried and tested European and American sherries and casks because that is all about the quality. On general, our winters is 5 degrees, summers 15. So this is where we're not losing too much to what we call the angel share. And that's when the casks are sitting, breathing throughout the year. We're losing well under 1% a year, which is very different compared to Speyside, which they can lose between 2 to 5%, which is a massive difference. And this is another unique feature of what makes our whisky very, very different from anybody else.
And what's the best thing about being based here in Orkney?
I think being able to talk about Orkney, that's what we have that differentiates us from most other brands. Our peat that we use, nobody else uses it. Our maturation in Orkney, we've got a very cool, temperate climate. It's a beautiful sunny day today, but we talk about highs and lows, temperatures of about 3 to 16. So there's not a huge swing. If you think about other areas that are producing whiskey, there's a much bigger swing. So I think being in Orkney is what makes Highland Park special.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Thank you for coming.
I'm looking forward to enjoying my driver's pack when I get home later on.
Excellent.
Thanks to my guests for being in this episode, and thanks to you too for listening. Please remember to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss an episode of Scran. Scran is co-produced and hosted by me, Rosalindl, and co-produced, edited and mixed by Kelly Crichton.